Yeah, good evening, everybody. Once again, we are covering off session 4. And session 4 really is one of my favorite parts of sort of this course, which is about understanding leadership and strategy and how those two sort of align. Let me just get my camera here a bit better. Okay, there we go. How those two align. So the first just 20 minutes or so, I'll just cover. I don't want to rehash quite a lot of the stuff that we've done already, but I just want to sort of talk about specifically strategic management and the strategic management process and that how that aligns to sustainability. If you can still remember when I spoke about sustainability, I said that sustainability is like the 4 legs of a table. If the one leg is about environmental stewardship, the way organizations take care of the environment, the resources that they take from it, and how do they offset that, their carbon footprint, how they offset it with other activities or through some sort of reinvestment back into the environment, and the efforts to reduce the amount of inputs into their products, but also how they design their products as well. So that whole environmental leg of the table, there's many different ways. It can be product design. That can be like Apple, for instance, the fact that they remove chargers from their boxes because they said, you know what, it reduces our carbon footprint. But in the meantime, actually, it was just for them to save money and to squeeze and to improve their sort of margins on the product. But it goes into everything. It can be from operations. The second leg of that sustainability table is sort of social license, the way you operate, and that can be all stakeholders. That can be both the community in which the mine operates in, or it can be the customer and the way you look after the customer, the way you give the customer sort of lifetime value. So it can be many different things within that sort of social leg of the table. And then the other 2 legs is what we've really been talking about in terms of King. And the one leg is about King, which is really about corporate governance, the way you transparent, the way you follow these principles. And as a public entity that has monies invested in you as a company, people's pensions, people have shares in you. You're a publicly traded company. You have a moral and ethical obligation and a legal obligation to ensure that you disclose and you're transparent. Again, there's that tension. And then the third leg, the fourth leg of the table is strategy. It is this idea of making financial decisions in such a way that provides long-term sustainability in terms of business operations, in terms of lifetime value of the brand, in terms of products, in terms of services that are offered. So we think of sustainability as the 4 legs of the table, social being one leg, environmental being that leg, corporate governance as encapsulated and framed by King 4. And then the last leg is sustainability, which is financial sustainability. Financial sustainability comes from strategy, making the right strategic decisions in order to build a sustainable business that will continue selling products that people continue want, increasing your margins, increasing your operational efficiency, increasing your operational effectiveness, while at the same time balancing all these other 3 legs in order for your table not to wobble. And that takes a leader that is very much aligned to fully understanding it is not just about the profit motive, because if you look at that Enron case study, if it's just about the profit motive, your table will fall over very, very quickly. You cannot just balance the table on 2 legs or even 3 legs. You need all 4 of those legs. And it requires a leadership. It requires a level of leadership that is very much aware of these, because all 4 of those things, they are opposing forces. When you talk about governance, yes, governance, King 4, transparency, all of those things, but there are certain things that a company don't want to disclose. The companies operating in mining companies operating in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is highly operational risk. There is many things that can go wrong. There is a civil war. There is poverty. There is famine. There is communities that are living on the border of the camp of this operation. And the mine is most probably making some operational decisions that is most probably illegal. That are most probably, in order to continue operations, they're most probably bribing the local chieftain. They're most probably paying off the rebels. Now, if a mining company is operating under those conditions, they're not going to be disclosing that. They're not going to be coming out with a report saying, "Ooh, we paid these rebel movement X amount of dollars in order to leave us alone so that we can continue operations." And there are many, many of those different things. iPhone doesn't say that, that cobalt that we have in our iPhone is mined by small children in the Congo illegally, and we're buying it through a supplier that supplies us in China in order for us to build our beautiful iPhones that has cobalt in it. Cobalt is one of and the supplier of the batteries in the iPhone is not going to disclose that. So all of these four legs of the stable are always pulling in different direction, and they have to be held in tension, and requires a leadership, it requires an executive team, it requires a board that really is absolutely serious about sustainability in the full sense. Transparent corporate governance, environmental stewardship, social license to operate in order to ensure that our stakeholders are looked after, well met, and benefit from the value that we create, and valued partners in the sense that we generate value for our shareholders in such a way that we can continue generating that value over time, not just in an increase in share price, but also in dividends that we pay out. And all four of those things are held in this absolute tension that just keep on pulling at one another. And it requires a management team, it requires a corporate leader, it requires a board of directors that is absolutely serious about it and is willing to make the very, very difficult decisions. And so morality and ethics in business decisions is it is not black and white. It is not just, this is the easy one. All of them are very, very difficult to make. Ethics, we saw about ethical theories as well, and then corporate citizenship. So if ethics and leadership and strategy, if you look at those three together, if ethics is the direction, think of a business like a ship. If ethics is the compass, so this is the direction, this shows us the direction. Leadership is the captain of the ship, and strategy is the map that we move along. So think of it in those particular way, how ethics, leadership, and strategy sort of interact. Ethics provide us the direction. Leadership is the navigation, which is steering the ship, and strategy is the map which we follow. Responsible leadership is, as I said earlier, is a very, very difficult and a very, very, you have to be convicted. You have to be willing to accept the consequences of your decisions. And if you're completely convicted of making the right decisions for the company, you must be willing to stand up for those decisions and say, if you company, if you leadership is not willing to follow me, then I'm going to resign. Now, not many business leaders are that convicted where they're willing to resign if the company is doing the wrong thing. Because essentially that's what it means. It means that I've got a clear moral vision for the company, which balances complexity and consequences, and you model integrity and responsibility, and you are willing to leave if the company or the leadership of the company, which is the ones that oversees you, the board of directors, if they undermine you. Because remember, in terms of the structure, you've got a board of directors that instructs, and the leadership of the company reports to the board. The board is a representative of the key shareholders in the company. So not many business leaders are willing to make that decision. It is a very difficult decision, but ultimately one should judge a business leader by their willingness to let go of the salary, to let go of all the advantages that comes with it, if they have a moral and ethical center that's willing to hold. If they don't have, and there are very few of them, if they don't have, then they'll obfuscate, they'll find excuses, they will shift blame, they'll shift responsibility to other parts and to others, but not take responsibility or accountability themselves. Responsible leaders embed shared values into the business goals and into the culture. Leadership and the culture of the organization starts from the top. A reflection of the organization is a reflection of its leaders. It's aligned with the strategy needs to be aligned with the values of the organization, and they must serve multiple stakeholders. It's not just about shareholders, but it's about other stakeholders, the local community, non-governmental organizations, governmental agencies, the customer, their suppliers, and everybody, all of the other stakeholders that the organization is aligned with. So what is the stakeholders? The stakeholders, as I said, are employees, their customers, their communities, their investors, regulators, and you have both short and long term, and they need to have a voice at the table. Now, in South Africa, we don't have, in Germany, interesting enough, we have companies have trade unions are part of the board of directors of most companies. So the trade union would have a representative on the board as a member of the board to be part of and make decisions on behalf of the company, but also represents the right of workers. In South Africa, we don't have that. There's very few companies which have worker representative or representation on their board. But there are some companies which does have, and that's the role of the non-executive, really the role of the non-executive directors. Non-executive directors are meant to be directors that are appointed by the company to be the voice of the stakeholders. Sometimes they are academics. Sometimes they are business leaders or ex-business leaders that are retired that now become directors of companies. And they're supposed to be that independent voice. That's why King makes provision, and they're quite strict on the number of independent directors that a board should have, must have. And if it doesn't have those number of independent, so those are directors that are not a shareholder. They are completely independent. They might be academics. They might be sort of career directors, and they don't represent. They represent the wider sort of public and stakeholders. And King is clear about how many there should be, and if there isn't those amount, then the board becomes dysfunctional. So the board, so King provides for that. In principle 1, which is ethical and effective leadership, and in principle 2, which is the role of the governing body, which is the role of the board of directors, and then stakeholder inclusivity. It's this apply and explain principle that we touched on last week. So now let's talk about strategy, embedding sustainability into strategy. So think again of those 4 legs of a table. How do the one leg being sustainability in terms of strategic decisions that are made? It is a deliberate and continuous process, and is supposed to be led by the corporate leaders. and it involves some strategic decisions. So what is the strategic management process? It's essentially setting strategic intent. Strategic intent of any organization is encapsulated or is expressed by its mission and by its vision. This is where we want to go. That is our direction that we want to go into. Now, if you go back to the example that I used about the compass, that intent, that direction then should be guided by ethics, should be guided by the moral imperative. And once you have the, as I said, once you, let's just get this color, strategic intent, you then move on to analyzing the environment, and that is where you review the environment. For some of you that has done business management so far, you fully understand analyzing the business environment, both the micro, which is internal, the external, which is both the market environment, using Porter's five forces, and then PESTLE, which is the macro environment, and use different tools in order to analyze the different environment. You then develop your strategy. You then develop your strategy, and there are different strategic options. If you look at Porter, Porter has a couple of strategic options, and then there's also at a corporate level and both at a business level that you have these strategic options that you have. You then execute that strategy. You implement it and you execute it. And while you execute it, you monitor and constantly evaluate your performance against that. And normally there is a set of dashboards or performance metrics, or they call them KPIs, key performance indicators. We want to increase our market share by 20%. That's a key performance indicator. Market share then becomes a key indicator of performance, or we want to increase and deliver value for our shareholders through our continued increase in our share price. So if you invest today, then in 5 years' time or 2 years' time, the share price would have increased by 20%, and we would have delivered 20% more value for your investment. And that's some of these sort of key metrics to measure performance, or to measure and monitor whether you are sort of delivering against the strategy. The strategy needs to be aligned with social impact. Now, this is where things get fuzzy. This is where things get interesting, because it's about delivering continued value to stakeholders over time. So what does that mean? Increase market share, increase revenue, increase profitability, increase share price. All of those are dollar amounts. All of those things are real. These are value, delivering value. How that needs to be balanced against social impact. In the process of delivering that value, what is the impact that you have on the environment and on society as a whole? Is the overall positive impact, or is the overall negative impact? What is the amount of a resource that you pull from the environment through energy use, through inputs into your manufacturing processes, through manufacturing your devices, your phones, through delivering your services? Even Facebook, which is a software company, which doesn't deliver a product, so they don't have cobalt in their products, but at the same time, they're also drawing a lot of these massive data centers that they have, and these massive data centers draw a lot of energy. They draw a lot of electricity in order to operate, because Facebook is, even if it's a piece of software, still runs on the internet, and it sits on a server somewhere, and those server farms and those massive data centers are run on energy. So even if it's just a social media platform, right down to a product company like iPhone, or right down to a manufacturer that does cars, all of them have an impact on the natural environment in some form, in some way. So the question is, how do you align your strategy in order to reduce the environmental impact and increase the social impact? So social impact being in a positive way, positive social impact. Economic development, meaning job creation. Economic development in a form of supplier development. Economic development in a form of overall societal upliftment. This is where ShopRite is so good versus Pick and Pay versus Woolworths. ShopRite measures its social impact, not through, if you look at, and this is so fascinating the way they approach it. And the one I quite admire ShopRite's approach, because it's a more of a realist approach. If you look at the corporate documents and the way that Woolworths sort of talk about their impact, it's about environmental impact, it's about using less water, using less electricity, using solar, no more plastic, organic foods, free-range chicken, local suppliers, and all of those things. ShopRite does none of that. ShopRite says, we measure our impact with the amount of stores that we open. Because we know every community where we open a store in has direct economic impact. We employ local people into that store. That store becomes a hub, and that is what they do. There might be no more. So people in the township, people in informal settlements, people in rural areas, they have what we call, they get taxed twice. They get a double tax. So if they need to go and buy just basic groceries, they have to get into a taxi and then go there and then get into a taxi and go back. And that needs to be added onto their cost of the food. So they get taxed twice. They have to pay at the till, but then they also have to pay this transport tax. So what ShopRite is saying, we go build a store. And next to that store, we will open up a PEP stores. There'll be a Capitec Bank, and there'll be a Hungry Lion, and there'll be space for local. There'll be space for local retailers, small businesses that's from the community, hairdresser, a person that sells that fixes cell phones, a person that sells cosmetics, a person that sells this, a person that sells that. But it's our building, and we will rent out those spaces at very minimal cost. That building becomes a hub, a commercial hub for the local community. It becomes a place where people can come and shop. They can walk to the shop, so they don't have to pay that transport tax or the double tax on their food. We employ people. We ensure that what we sell is always at an affordable price. So all of the basic things that you need to make a meal, IQF chicken, fish oil, a maize meal, flour, rice, these basic foodstuffs we'll provide, and a protein like either fish, we will provide at the lowest price. So our social impact isn't children on our annual report smiling as we give them stuff. Our social impact is the amount of stores that we open, because we know every place that we open up a store, we leave direct economic impact through our operations. Two very different ways of looking at things, and very much an alignment to their sustainability strategy, because one feeds into the other. Once there's a store that's open, you'll find that now suddenly there's an economic hub. Now suddenly you find there's a McDonald's that come. Now finally you find there's a Kentucky that come. Now suddenly you find there's other stores that are, and that whole area starts expanding, and very soon it's not just a ShopRite and a Capitec Bank and a PEP stores and a Hungry Lion. There's now an entire sort of economic center that becomes the hub of that local community. And that's aligning strategy with social impact. And I don't know whether it's intentional, but that's what they do. So it's very, very interesting. And do yourself a favor, pull the annual report for Woolworths, pull the annual report for Pick and Pay, pull the annual report for ShopRite, pull the annual report for Spar, which is our 4 main retailers, and just look at how they present themselves. Very, very different in the way they present themselves. So, strategic management process, evaluate, you set strategic intent, you evaluate the environment, you formulate your strategy, you implement your strategy, you review. That strategy needs to be aligned to social impact and also have purpose-driven statements. Strategic direction, analysis, and choice. So it starts off with what we call the corporate vision and mission, and then the goals and objectives and the values of the organization. Analyze the environment, both the internal and external environment, and then you've got strategic choice. So you've got different options in terms of a business level strategy. You can either have cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. I'm not going to go through all of them. You guys can read through them in Bardeno's reading, as well as the corporate level. You both have a growth strategy, internal, external growth strategy, or you can have a defensive strategy as well. Sustainability across your strategic process, direction, analysis, and choice. Sustainability flows throughout, or should flow throughout, in terms of how you process and put together your strategy. So how do you embed the strategy? How do you make sure that the strategy that you, the map that you've settled on as a leader, as the captain of the ship, how do you ensure that sustainable and ethical behavior as encapsulated on your in your values, in your value statement, sort of permeates throughout the organization? So there's different ways of doing it. One, leadership. You model it, you show it right from the top. Organizational culture, the things that are acceptable, the things that are encouraged and reinforced. The structure of the organization, clear roles and responsibilities, and accountability. If you're doing something wrong, this is the result of non-compliance. Reward systems, aligning incentives with sustainable outcomes. And this is interesting. I mean, imagine being able to pay a CEO one day based on shareholder value, profitability, and then also on carbon footprint. As you reduce your carbon footprint, you get a bonus. And it will incentivize focusing on that. At the moment, incentive schemes aren't based on social impact or environmental stewardship. And procedures within organization, and then education, something that needs to be done in the organization consistently to train and educate the entire organization on this is what is acceptable, this is not acceptable, this is ethical behavior, this is behavior that is not ethical. It might not be illegal, but it's definitely not aligned to our values in organization. And then also technology that enables transparency and efficiency. All right. Any questions? I have gone through that super quick.
Nothing yet from my side. Would it still be okay if we encounter, maybe I'm just saying this hypothetically, encounter problems and then next week, because it's due after next week, right? And then next week during this session, ask you more questions if possible?
Yes, on the assignment or on
assignment, sir. On assignment
on
one.
the assignment.
Yes.
Okay, good, no problem. I do have two questions because I asked you guys to send me some questions. So I've got one question from a student that asked about comparing King 4 with previous report, and he asked, should I repeat? Should we sort of compare to all of them? And the answer is no. Compare them only 3 and 4. And that is fairly acceptable because 4 is based on 3 and 3 is based on 2 and 1. So just comparing 3 and 4 should be more than should cover and answer the question. In terms of how you compare them, you can either do 2 approach, which is a broad overview, the structure and how the emphasis is assisted, or more detailed comparison of the principles. So you can have principle 1 and principle 2, and you can say, this is how the principles have changed. And you don't need to choose all of them. You choose what is relevant to the case. Choose the approach that allows you to make a more meaningful and focused argument. Depth is better than breadth. So instead of trying to do all of it, try to more focus on a few sort of key principles that you want to compare and how it has changed. I mean, the leadership, the sustainability, the stakeholder inclusivity, all three of those have changed, not substantially, but it's more, whereas before it was, you can do this, here's a proposal, here's a suggestion. For it is, you must do this. So it changed a lot. The wording changed a lot from, here's a framework that you can follow. And if you follow it, you follow it. If you don't follow it, or you can interpret it the way you want to. For, this is the framework, this is what you need to do. And here's clear guidelines in terms of the principle. And yeah, you can use examples from one or two key principles and make sure to explain what changed and why it matters. Another question was specific reporting requirements and best practices. And this part asks in terms of King 4 expectations on organizations to report. So as before, it only report on the things that you do, and you don't have to explain the things that you don't do. Whereas now, King 4 is saying that you have to report on all of them and say why you are not aligning or is not compliant on these principles. And for this assignment, you might want to sort of identify 2 or 3 key areas, and emphasizes where it emphasizes transparency, integrated thinking, and shareholder reporting, and also discuss why these reporting practices are important for accountability, ethical governance, or long-term value creation. Long-term value creation is simply, if I put R1 or $1 into a company today, in 10 years' time, I want that to be more than inflation or more than its peers if I should have invested in somewhere else. So when we talk about value creation, long-term value creation, it is how much has a share price increased over time and delivered value, but also in the time that I have stayed invested in the company, have I also received dividends as well as part of that. Okay, does that make sense?
I guess so, sir.
Alrighty, no problem. Yeah, please do send some more questions. If you can do it before next week's session, as you're busy. I've got a feeling that some of you are only really starting on this assignment this week.
Correct.
Which is okay. And if you have some questions as you're busy working through it, please just jot them down and try to send them to me on a Monday or maybe Sunday as you're busy working on it. And then I can prepare them for us. And then on Tuesday, I'll do the same thing, in which the first half of the session, I'll cover sort of the content. Not rushed, but sort of pick specific elements of the content, and then spend our second half of the session on answering some of those questions. All right.
Noted, sir.
Sir.
Yes.
Sorry, before we end, remember when I told you that person doesn't exist? I don't think they here with us right now. I don't think they now.
Don't say that.
Not like that. Not like that.
Jeez. I'm sure they're alive somewhere. Yeah, I'm just joking.
I don't think they know class. So what should
Email
Candace
me.
and I do?
Yeah, email me the details. And then I'll also ask our team just to reach out to them to find out where they are. Because if they have deregistered, as I said, or they might just be able, or they might just be going through something. We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, but carry on. Don't wait. Just carry on doing what you need to do.
Okay, so.
And if they do reach out, they'll then. So what happens is that I would most probably send what is this week 4. By next week Friday, next week Monday, I'll send out a note. And and basically I detail sort of milestones. So I'll say that if you are working together and you've got one member of your group which have not contributed whatsoever, by a certain time, you have the opportunity to speak to me and I can take them out of your group. They will then be responsible for delivering this assignment by themselves.
Okay.
And if they submit it, they submit it. If they don't, then they don't. Then they fail the course, because it's quite a lot of work. But once you've gone past that point and you haven't raised an issue, then you have to carry that person.
Okay.
You know, and just take the responsibility for carrying that person, because you had the chance to kick them out of the group. You didn't take it. And I also know people say, "Don't worry, I'm just going through something. I'll start contributing. Just tell me what to do, and I'll send it to you." And then, like 2 weeks before submission, you all sort of coming together, you're putting everything together, and you find out that person hasn't done anything. And then the 2 people left in the group now have to pull a third of the assignment together by themselves, and it builds resentment. And you get angry, and you go, "Oh, group work doesn't work. Oh, I hate group work. Oh, people are so, wow, woe is me." And it is unfortunate, but in real life, when you're working in an organization, you're also going to be doing a lot of group work. So it's about how do you manage that relationship? Because sometimes, and that is why I'm asking you guys to do it early, start connecting early, so that you do small pieces at a time, because you can start seeing the person's work ethic as you're beginning to do things. The worst possible thing to do is to say, "Okay, you do that, you do that, you do this," and 2 weeks before the time we put it together. And then you don't speak for 6 weeks. And then after 6 weeks, you reach out, the person like stonewall you, they ignore you, and like a week before submission, you come crying to me, say, "Sir, our person is not contributing, they're not there, they're not there, they're not there." And then it's like too late. So small pieces at a time, and you're beginning to see people's work ethic, and then you start managing it. If you're seeing a person is like, don't let them do. Don't let them be the editor in putting everything together. If they come like a off, you're setting yourself up. And then you have the other extreme where you've got control people that, I want to control it. Let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. And then you send them stuff, and then they change everything. The best way to do this assignment is small pieces at a time, little pieces. Each one does the same thing. You put it together, you review it, you agree. You then tackle the next thing. All of you do the same thing. Not you do this, you do that, you do this. All of you do the same question. You have your answer. All of you put the same answer onto the document. And you've got Suma's answer, Robin's answer, and then one person starts putting the answer together, and then get one answer out of it. And that's the best way of doing it. Little pieces at a time, little pieces at a time. This thing about sending it out, you do this, you do that, you do this, and then we'll put it together at the end. It never works. Yeah. Good luck. All the best, guys. Thank you very much for the evening. Thank you for taking the time to sign in. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Tiamo.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good evening. Cheers. Bye.